Blog Talk Radio.
Happy Saturday. It is another perfect day for football, and it's also the perfect time, 11 a.m. for House Talk pregame. Look, folks, I am your host, empowerment coach, and inspirational speaker, Dr. Lauren Pitts. I am very, very excited, as always, to have my co-host with me, Ronnie Ransome from Virginia State. Jared will be joining us later on in the show. Andre, it's looking like probably won't be able to be with us until maybe basketball season, but I promise y'all he is coming. Look, we're excited. We are excited to be doing House Talk pregame because for us it is all about family and showing, in particular, much love to our HBCU family, student and professional athletes, and their families. Speaking of family, though, our House Talk pregame family has grown, and we are now a part of Heritage Sports Radio Network family, and you'll be able to check us out on Heritage Sports Radio Network real soon. I actually had a meeting with them last Friday, really excited about that. So logistically, we're still working out the programming as to which days and times we're going to be airing on Heritage Sports Radio Network, but it is coming really, really soon. So we're super, super, super excited about that. Ronnie, what you got for him today?
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Pitts, and good morning to everybody out there listening to us this morning. It is a beautiful sunny morning today. Shout out to all the HBCUs out there. For some of you, I know it's homecoming weekend, and unfortunately, homecoming weekend has been canceled for a lot of schools. So, continue to check on your HBCU family, make sure they're doing all right because, typically homecoming weekend is when we all get back together and reunite as a family. It's one big family reunion. But, as we've been talking for the last month and a half, we've been having some very thought-provoking and deep conversations here on House Talk, dealing with these rough times. COVID is starting to ramp back up in certain states. Yeah. Certain schools are still not playing football or having kids on campus. So, we need to have these discussions about what's going on and how we can help our families, continue to prepare for these uncertain times. And we're doing that here on House Talk, especially for our student athletes. So during today's show, we will be taking call-in questions and comments by simply dialing direct at 515-605-9744 or email your HBCU shout-outs, questions, or comments to htpregame@gmail.com. Back to you, Dr. Pitts.
Yes. So one of the things that we were really excited about doing as we started fleshing out what the next year, 2 years, 3 years of House Talk pregame was going to look like, we really got into some in-depth discussion concerning the influence of mental health, particularly among Black and brown communities. But then we wanted to take a deep dive we wanted to take a deep dive into what that looks like among scholar athletes and professional athletes, and that trickle-down effect, that what we clinically call that systemic effect and influence on the family system and the broader community. So to address that, every week we do a diagnosis of the week. And this week, we are going to give you some insight and illuminate some things for you greatly as it relates to social anxiety disorder. Now, let me just tell you, social anxiety, people are like, what the heck is that? Is that, cut it out, Dr. Pitts. That means she's just a little bit shy. No.
Right.
Social anxiety disorder is more than just shyness. So I want to ask you a couple of thought-provoking questions. Are you or somebody that you know extremely afraid of being judged by others? Are you very self-conscious in everyday social situations? Do you avoid meeting new people? If you answered yes to any of those questions, I want you to think about this. If you have been feeling this way for at least 6 months, and these feelings make it hard for you to do everyday tasks, such as talking to people at work or school, you may actually have social anxiety disorder. So you're saying, okay, you got my attention, Dr. Pitts. What is social anxiety disorder? Well, first and foremost, it's a mental health condition. It's an intense, persistent fear of being watched and judged by others. And goodness gracious, we know that's the case when it comes to scholar and professional athletes. This fear can affect work, school, and your other day-to-day activities. It can even make it hard to make and keep friends. But social anxiety disorder doesn't have to stop you from reaching your potential. Treatment can help you overcome your symptoms. And I just want to give you some symptoms for you to pay attention to, and then Ronnie is going to share with you some things that you can do if you think this might be you, because certainly we don't want you to self-diagnose, and we're not self-diagnosing you over the air. We want to make sure that you get properly assessed so that you can get the help that you need. So what are some signs and symptoms of social anxiety disorder? Well, the bottom line here is when having to perform in front of or be around others, people with social anxiety disorder tend to blush, sweat, tremble, feel a rapid heart rate, or feel their mind going blank. You might feel nauseous or sick to your stomach. You might show a rigid body posture, make little eye contact, or speak with an overly soft voice. You might also find it scary and difficult to be with other people, especially those you don't already know, and you have a hard time talking to them, even though you really would like to do that. You may be very self-conscious in front of other people and feel embarrassed and awkward. You may be very afraid that other people will judge you, and you may stay away from places where there are other people. Ronnie, you want to give them some insight?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And that was a lot of great information. And just real quick, just a little self-disclosure. Social anxiety disorder is something that I have, at times throughout my life, whether it's, football playing career or professional career, have struggled with. And just to be extremely honest, when Dr. Pitts had first presented this idea of me joining her podcast, I definitely had, an overwhelming feeling of social anxiety, due to, public speaking was not always one of my strong suits growing up. I could do great with one-on-one conversations and things like that, but in front of a group or, speaking on a platform like this where, we have, millions of listeners each week, that was something that I had to really prepare myself for. Some of the things that you can help with social anxiety disorder, one of the first things we work with clients on is creating affirmations. And affirmations are little small statements that you can say to yourself when you're having these anxious thoughts. So some affirmations include, and these are things that you can repeat to yourself, whether looking in the mirror at yourself or just on your way to work, on the way to a social function. These are things you can repeat to yourself out loud or in your head. I am confident. It's easy to meet new people. I am relaxed at parties. I am relaxed in social situations. People think I'm confident, and there are a lot of good things about me. Yeah. If you're looking for, talking to a mental health professional, whether it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a counselor, one of the things that they might do with you is what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short. And one of the central goals of CBT is to identify irrational beliefs and thought patterns and replace them with more realistic views. As a part of the therapy process, you will work on a number of problem areas, including misperceptions you may have about your abilities and self-worth, guilt, embarrassment, or anger over past situations, how to be more assertive in social situations, tackling perfectionism and being more realistic, and dealing with procrastination related to social anxiety. If you are somebody who's suffering from a severe case of social anxiety disorder, your therapist or psychiatrist might also recommend some medications for social anxiety. One of the first medications that might be recommended is what we call benzodiazepines, which are sedatives that can help relax your muscles and calm your mind. They work by increasing the effects of certain neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that relay messages between your brain cells. Some of those medications include Xanax and Valium. And then what we talked about last week, SSRIs, what are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or antidepressants. These also help with people who are suffering from social anxiety disorder. So some of these medications include Prozac, Paxil, or Zoloft. If you or somebody you know is suffering from social anxiety disorder or any mental health problem and you want to get professional mental health help, you can find me in the Central Virginia area at Supportive Intervention Services or Virginia Counseling Associates. I offer myself intensive in-home counseling, which is counseling for youth and adolescents, mental health skill building, which is mental health services for adults, and I also do therapeutic mentoring for children, teens, and adolescents as well. So you can find me at any one of those locations if you're in the Central Virginia area. And if you're also living in the New Jersey area, please check out Dr. Pitts and her empowerment and life coaching services as well.
Yes, indeed. And Ronnie, before we move on to our HBCU shout-outs, one of the things that I do want to address real quick, because I think, our listeners may be wondering, what causes social anxiety disorder, right? So we told you what it is and we told you how to treat it, but knowing some of the causes I think are important too. So just be mindful that social anxiety disorder sometimes runs in families. There we go with the systemic piece again. But no one knows for sure why some family members have it while others don't. Researchers have found that several parts of the brain are involved in fear and anxiety. Some researchers think that misreading of others' behavior may play a role in causing or worsening social anxiety. I think that it's important to learn more about fear and anxiety and really how one processes fear and anxiety. And I think that when researchers continue to sort of delve into that, it'll be instrumental in helping them to create better treatments. Also, researchers are looking for ways in which stress and environmental factors may play a role. Now, I will tell you, I don't suffer from social anxiety disorder, but to Ronnie's point about a treatment, I have always been, for many years, let me clear that up, not always. Goodness gracious, since I was an adolescent, I've become very, very big on affirmations, not just within the context of social anxiety disorder, but affirmations can help with social anxiety disorder. They can also help to build self-esteem and self-worth and to really help individuals to be introspective in a much healthier way as it relates to their dialogue with themselves about how they think, how they feel, what they look like, and those sorts of things. Because one thing we do know to be true, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to make a correlation between your self-esteem and your self-worth and social anxiety. Why? Because when you are confident with yourself, when you feel good about yourself, social anxiety might not be able to grip you as easily as for others. So just keep that in mind, that the affirmations do help. I will tell you what my therapist told me many years ago. She said, initially, you may feel stupid, for lack of a better word, or you may feel foolish saying the affirmations out loud. Well, why would I feel foolish, Dr. Pitts? Because you don't believe what you're saying. Because if you actually believed those things already, you wouldn't necessarily have to affirm them, right?
Absolutely.
So just be mindful of that when you first start doing affirmations, and you can Google them. You can Google different types of affirmations on the internet and come up with a list. I currently have a list of 57 affirmations that I say to keep in the forefront of my mind the queen that I am. Why? Because I'm human, and there's days where I don't necessarily always feel my best self, and there's times that I need to remind myself that despite my human fallacies and imperfections, I'm I'm all right. I like to refer to myself as I am a masterpiece in the making. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Ronnie,
And
let's
Dr.
get these
Pitts,
shout outs. Go ahead.
One quick thing before we jump into our HBCU shout outs, and maybe you can answer this because you definitely hit it on something when you were talking about you and your therapist and how you felt, when she brought to you the affirmations, how you felt, almost stupid saying them to yourself. What do you say to the client who comes into your office or has a session with you and you give them the affirmations as a coping skill and they come back next session and say, well, it didn't work? Because oftentimes in the mental health field, we have clients who, we give them coping skills or resources, and they have this notion that it's going to work the first time you try it. So what do you tell that person who wants to get professional help but doesn't necessarily understand that it might take a couple of times of practicing it for it to actually work?
It takes more than a couple of times. Anything that you do at least 21 times will become a habit. So what I tell my clients is to give it a shot and to remain committed to it, even though it feels awkward, for at least 30 days. And with each day that they do it, even in their discomfort, each day will increase their ability to feel better about doing it. But if you go in with the mindset that, it doesn't work, there's no surprise that they feel that way. If they didn't, we wouldn't even have to steer them in that direction. So I just remind them that it's just like anything else. It's not going to happen overnight. Your self-esteem didn't get shattered overnight. Your low self-worth didn't get shattered overnight. Your feelings as it relates to anxiety and fear didn't just happen overnight. Are you willing to do the self-work that is necessary to improve how you view yourself? And, more times than not, they say yes. And I say, give it 30 days and you'll start to feel better. Let's talk about it. I'll do check-ins too. I won't check in every session, but every 2-3 sessions or so. How you making out with your affirmations? There have also been cases, Ronnie, where I will, I will close out the session by requiring my client to state their affirmations out loud to me.
Okay, that's beautiful right there.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that will also help, deal with that anxiety of even, because sometimes clients will have anxiety even practicing the affirmations because they're so worried about, well, how do I say it? Is my tone perfect enough to say it? Am I speaking loud enough? Should I look at myself in the mirror? Should I not? They even get anxiety even practicing the affirmation. So, definitely that reassurance of practicing it in front of your therapist or mental health professional is very key as well.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yep. Indeed. Let's get these shout outs.
All right. Yeah. So I will go first. So real quick, typically, each week we shout out 1 to 2 HBCUs across the country and, highlight them. So during the week, I was scrolling through Instagram as I normally do, and I followed this page called HBCU Wall Street, and they had a post talking about different trades, and in their caption they said, did you know there are 13 2-year HBCUs that offer associate degrees and certificate programs? And I said, well, no, I did not know that. I did not know. I knew if there was a couple 2-year HBCUs, but I did not know there were 13 2-year HBCUs. So I did a little bit more research and come to find out there are 2-year HBCUs located in Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, and our nation's capital of Washington, D.C.
Nice.
There are also several 4-year HBCUs such as Arkansas Baptist College, Lincoln University of Missouri, Selma University, Simmons College of Kentucky, and the University of Virgin Islands that offer both bachelor's and associate degree programs.
Nice.
So, a couple weeks ago we were talking about, careers outside of playing sports, and we called out a lot of HBCUs for wanting to offer more trade programs like being a plumber, crane operator, commercial driver, HVAC, welding, carpenter, things like that. So I want to highlight 2 2-year HBCUs that offer some of these programs. The first one is Bishop State Community College, located in Mobile, Alabama. They were founded in 1927, and some of the 2-year programs and certificate programs they offer are diesel technology, welding, electrical technology, cosmetology, and also cybersecurity. The second school I want to highlight is Denmark Technical College, which is located in Denmark, South Carolina. They were founded in 1947. This school offers 25 2-year degree programs, several 1-year degree programs, and a bunch of certificate programs, including plumbing, cybersecurity, culinary arts, and also HVAC and electricity technicians. So, guys, we talk about all the time, college might not be for you, and that's fine. College is not for every single person. However, there are plenty of jobs out here. Let me just read to you real quick. A plumber on average makes anywhere from $27 to $45 an hour. A commercial driver makes anywhere from $25 to $37 an hour. An HVAC technician, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, they make anywhere from $24 to $39 an hour. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, there are plenty of jobs out here that you don't have to necessarily go to a 4-year institution for, and you can make great money for you and your family. So those are the shout-outs I have for this week. Who do you have, Dr. Pitts?
Nice. I have FAMU. And I know that we had discussions, right, about we wanted to highlight some of the lesser known schools and certainly be able to do that. But I just have a love for my Rattlers, and I said, let me just go ahead and shout them out and get it out my system. So Florida, I do. I love my Rattlers. Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University was founded as the state normal college for colored students on October 3rd, 1887. It began classes with 15 students and 2 instructors. Today, FAMU, as it has become affectionately known, is the premier school among historically Black colleges and universities. Top undergraduate programs are architecture, journalism, computer information sciences, and psychology. And just as a side note, one of the reasons why I love FAMU so much is because I was, in my hospitality days, I was their director of catering for 3 years. Absolutely beautiful campus, up on the hill, sharing the College of Engineering with Florida State University. Tallahassee, Florida, by far, with all the places that I've lived in the country and around the world, Tallahassee, Florida is definitely one of my favorite places to live. But I remember, Ronnie, when I went to visit campus before Marriott. I was working for Marriott at the time before they transferred me there. And I remember meeting with the director of auxiliary services at the time, and they were asking me, had I ever worked on an HBCU campus before? And I was like, well, no, but I went to an HBCU. And they were talking about the culture. And there was, there was all this emphasis put on the culture of an HBCU being different than anything that I would ever experience in my life. And at the time, I was still a little naive, right? Like I said, I had attended Howard for a semester, but I hadn't really been entrenched, right? And I'm, my thought was, well, I'm Black. I mean, how much cost, what you talking about? But exactly. Let me tell you, whole different experience. So, I mean, we're going to get into that actually because of what our topic is for today. But what I never knew in the 3 years that I was working there, Ronnie, is that the Rattler mascot is based on popular folklore. Never knew that. When the school relocated to Highwood Plantation in 1891, the rural landscape had an abundance of snakes, especially rattlesnakes.
Oh, wow.
This is how, didn't know that. This is how the mascot name, the Rattlers, was chosen. So some interesting notable alum. In total, Florida A&M has had 66 players drafted to the NFL since 1953.
Oh, wow.
66,
shout out to
right?
You for that.
Look, they doing the darn thing in Tallahassee. Most recently, 2013 draft, Brandon Hepburn went to Detroit Lions. He was a linebacker. 2011 was Curtis Holcomb, San Francisco 49ers defensive back. And in 2000, Jaywan Sider, San Diego Chargers for quarterback. Also, famous alum John Thompson, he is the chair for Microsoft. Althea Gibson, first African American to win Wimbledon women's single crown. Dr. LaSalle D. Leffall Jr., nationally acclaimed cancer surgeon and first African American president of the American Cancer Society. Congresswoman Carrie Meek, the first African American woman elected to the Florida Senate and U.S. Representative. Pam Oliver, everybody knows who Pam Oliver is, reporter for Fox Sports. Rob Hardy and Will Packer, filmmakers from Stomp the Yard, This Christmas, and Obsessed. Yep, they doing the darn thing at FAM. Anika Noni Rose, actress who was in Dreamgirls and a 2004 Tony Award winner for Best Featured Actress in a Musical. Robert Bullet Bob Hayes, Olympic gold medalist, and Takia Crystal Kima, actress in Living Color, The Cosby Show, and That's So Raven. So they doing some big things at FAMU. They're cranking them out.
Absolutely. FAMU is another school that should never, ever, ever have to worry about any financial struggles. If they can't get support from the state, that's some powerful alumni you just listed off there.
Yep. Should never be a shortage of loot coming in the FAM.
At all. Shout out to FAMU. And I also believe their marching band, the Marching 100, are going to be on BET today. Because BET's doing a virtual homecoming, shouting out all the HBCUs. And I believe their band alongside, don't quote me, but I want to say Grambling State's band also is going to be performing live on BET this afternoon. So if you have BET, definitely check that out, as they're highlighting a lot of HBCUs across the country, and we'll be having live performances as well.
Look, it's funny you bring up the bands, because my fiance is not he's not a big college football fan, and I told him college football at an HBCU is a whole nother experience than football anyplace else. I said, baby, you have not seen anything. I said, a lot of people actually come to the HBCU football games for the bands. I said,
absolutely.
It's the truth. Being on, and at the time, and I'm not sure if Dr. White is still the band director at FAM or not. I would have to look that up. But to see the 100 perform, like up close and personal, and then I had to feed them, right? So, seeing them come in during band camp in the summertime and after practice each day, oh my God, I was just on like a musical high, being able to literally cater to them. Just an extraordinary experience. And I tell anybody, if you have never been to an HBCU Battle of the Bands, you don't know what you're missing.
My goodness. And speaking on how the bands prepare and stuff, a lot of people don't realize this. Oftentimes the bands, they go harder than the athletic programs. I remember when I was at state,
and everything.
We start summer camp. We normally start at maybe 6 in the morning. The band's already been out there for at least 2-3 hours running, practicing, and things like that. And they'll go 20 hours a day easily. Yeah. Just to watch them put it all together, I mean, there's nothing like a HBCU band at all.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing like it.
Yeah, it really is. So look, folks, today, House Talk pregame every week it's about relationships. It really is. It's about relationships. It's about family. It's about, the broader perspective of relationships within our communities. And we have some hard discussions. We go hard on pregame. And today we really want to get into the importance of networking and relationships as it relates to associations, and the importance, oh my goodness, Ronnie, when you think about the conversation that we were having before we came on the air, how important it is for, our scholar athletes and professional athletes and even their family members to have a rock solid support system. It speaks to what we talked about last week when we were talking about Dak and really hoping and praying that not just the team, but that literally everybody, as they're doing. I mean, it's just the outpouring of love and support that he's receiving is just unsurpassed. But we need that. We absolutely positively need that. And we're going to have that discussion today. And we're going to, look at that within the context of the culture of our HBCU campuses. And really, our hope is to hammer home for you, our listeners, how important it is to have a rock-solid support system that is beyond the athlete's talent. Emotional support, physical support, career support, mental health support. There's so many different layers and so many different types of support that we all need as human beings in order to be emotionally well and physically well too. And we want to talk about that today. So, Ronnie, while we're waiting for Jared to join us, let's go ahead and get started.
Sure. So when we talk about, networking and building, building that support system for student athletes and things like that, I'll just give a little, personal story about me. Part of the reason I wanted to get into counseling and be a counselor in the first place was because I understood at a very early age that I had a support system around me that a lot of my other teammates didn't have. And when I talk about, support system, of course, I had my parents who were very supportive. I had my sister. I had, teachers, coaches who always, made sure I was doing what I was supposed to do and were looking out for me. And part of that was because of my own effort that I gave in the classroom and on the football field. But what I noticed was some of my teammates didn't have that same support, whether it was, the parents weren't coming to sporting events, the parents weren't necessarily involved with their academic affairs and things like that. And I was actually reading an article before we got on the air, and it was talking about how having that support system, even for, little league sports and high school sports, has shown that the more support you have as a student athlete, the more your self-esteem and confidence rises when you're performing your sport. And oftentimes when, kids don't have their parents who come to games and things like that, their performance might suffer, because, they don't have that extra motivation to, go out there and perform and things like that. So, for me, when I played football and things like that, it was very important to have that support system around me, especially when I had suffered injuries when I got to college and things like that, to lean on them and give me that motivation and that guidance to continue to push forward.
You to your point, Ronnie, I don't know why, but I have always found very deep messages seemingly in almost anything, but particularly movies. And as you were speaking, what came to mind is the scene in Love and Basketball where Monica, who was played by Sanaa Lathan, had come home and she had gotten into an argument in the kitchen with her mom, who was played by Alfre Woodard. And she was saying, "Mom, I must have played in over 1,000 games, and I can only remember you coming to 2. And her mom said, "Child, you had your coaches and your daddy and your sister. You know you wasn't worried about me coming to your games." And she said, "Mom, it mattered. It mattered."
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to hammer home for you, our listeners, is that it's not about whether or not you love whatever sport it is that your child is playing. What we're challenging you to do is to love your child enough where possible, because we know there's situations and circumstances, single parents working 2-3 jobs and what have you, where it might get a little hectic. But we're asking you to love your child enough to put forth every effort to be emotionally and physically present where possible. Now, what I will tell you, and I get it, I'm putting the disclaimer out there that I understand that everybody's situation and circumstance is different. But I will tell you this, Ronnie, Andre's father and I broke up when Andre was 5 years old. But we made the commitment that we were going to co-parent in the healthiest possible way we could. In that, his dad's in single parent mode, I'm in single parent mode, we're juggling careers, we're juggling academics, because his dad, we were teen parents, right? So his dad was in undergrad, I was in undergrad, then I, went back to part-time, his dad left undergrad, transitioned into grad school on the West Coast because he went to USC, and we figured it out. I kid you not, people didn't understand how I would allow, if you will, even though his dad and I weren't together, sometimes I may have been dating, sometimes I wasn't, but it wasn't about that. It was about, I need you here to help support this child through his endeavors, because Andre played football, basketball, baseball for a short period of time. He ran track, and he was even in the band.
Wow, man did it
right,
all.
He did it all, right? And I kid you not, Ronnie, his dad, was, like I said, he was in grad school out in California. He would fly in and he would position his trip so that he could make at least 3 or 4 of Andre's games, right? So, of course, that was a little harder to do during football season. It was easier to do during baseball season and basketball season because there's more games. But we worked that out, and we put our differences aside. For me, I worked full-time, teeter-tottered between full-time school and part-time school, and coordinated his schedule so that he could get to practices. I could make the games. There were years when he was playing sports that I was team mom and juggling it. And we were living in Florida, and his dad was in New York. We were living in Florida. His dad was in New Jersey. We were living in Florida. His dad was in Maryland. But we worked it out. So I'm not insensitive to the challenges that single parents have, but what I do believe, and I feel very strongly about this, is that people can work things out that they choose to work out. I believe that people have a way of prioritizing what they want to prioritize. Because, let's just face it, they'll take off work to go to a Beyonce concert. They'll take
Absolutely.
off work to go see Jay-Z or Jay-Z and Beyonce. They'll take off to go to see whomever. But for some, child, I gotta work. I ain't got time to come to the game. Just take the, just video it or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I take issue with that. I do.
And you touched on a very, and shout out to you and, Andre's father for at a very early age, understanding that the importance of co-parenting and him being able to see both his parents come together despite their differences, and to be able to show him unconditional support. A lot of people don't understand how much that impacts a child. Like we always talk about, especially in the mental health field, the importance of a child having both parents, having that relationship with both parents and seeing both parents have a healthy relationship with each other. And even though in Dr. Pitts' specific situation where her and her son's father, necessarily weren't together, they made a commitment that, it was more important to be able to have a healthy co-parenting relationship for their son so that he could continue to excel academically and athletically. And oftentimes people don't understand that those things can hinder, a student's performance in the classroom and on the field, especially when they see their parents struggling, whether it's financially, working multiple jobs, for single parents, not getting that support from the other parent and things like that. So, shout out to you, Dr. Pitts, for, you and your, son's father for being able to have that relationship and being able to come together and show Andre that, look, we might not be together in a relationship, but we're here for you no matter what. And I'm pretty sure that right there helped bolster his confidence when he went into the classroom and on the football field.
Yeah, it's Ronnie, and I want to present it this way to our listening audience. And another disclaimer, I'm not saying that Andre's father and I did everything right, but what we did do was we chose to try. We chose to put our differences aside. We chose to put up a unified front. We chose to make Andre's best interest our priority regardless. And I will tell you, don't have to go into the details, but as you were speaking, one of the other things that came to mind is that during Andre's senior year in high school, he was playing basketball, and we had to we were living right outside of Daytona Beach at the time. I'm working full-time and going to school full-time in Jacksonville. His dad is working. I believe by that time he was living in the Maryland area, living his life and doing what he does. But we had to take Andre to Miami for, what do they call it, Ronnie? When they do like a freshman weekend. They do the freshman weekend.
Like spring break week?
Yeah, it was like that where they had all these activities and everything lined up for the incoming freshmen. And, we went through, they just had a ton of stuff. His dad worked and then drove. I don't even remember what was going on at the time and why he didn't fly. But he drove from Maryland all the way to our house. And then we drove from where Andre and I were living right outside of Daytona Beach. We drove all the way to Miami. We were down in Miami for 4 days, came back, he took a nap, and he drove all the way back. I highlight that because, but the sacrifice, and I know, I guess, this is fitting because, so oftentimes, Ronnie, we see this in our clinical work too, that, as therapists, in order to be able to address particularly the children that we have, and even some of the adult clients that we have, right, that have mommy and daddy issues, what often comes up is this discord that exists between the parents that is having an adverse impact on the well-being of the child. And I think that it's really important to highlight that as we talk about associations and networking, because discord in the parents can create barriers to the scholar athlete being able to do that effectively. Associations and networking are about relationships. And if the only example that they see is persistent discord, if the only example that they see is a lack of trust or backbiting and strife and craziness, isn't it fair to say that could potentially hinder their ability to communicate effectively when it comes to creating a solid networking unit to help them to be successful in their academic and athletic paths?
Absolutely. And I've kind of touched on this, in several episodes when, we're talking about networking and being a part of associations and things like that. During my undergrad years, And, and a lot, whether you played, sports or not in college, everybody knows this, they always tell you, your 4 years of undergrad will shape the rest of your life, because a lot of the people you meet in college and become friends with become lifelong friends, as opposed to the ones you grew up with in middle school and high school, because these are, your undergrad years are your formative years, when you're laying the foundation for the rest of your life. And, a lot of college campuses, they offer fraternities, sororities, other organization clubs and things like that. And for me personally, I used to, go back and forth with the idea of possibly joining a fraternity and things like that. And, for me, I was like, I was fine with, the group of friends I had coming out of high school and, my teammates and things like that. I was content with that. I could be myself around them. But I was never much a very outgoing person as far as like, going to these social events on campus or joining these social clubs and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, now looking back at it in hindsight, do I wish that maybe I could have, involved myself more and stuff like that? Absolutely. And to your point you were making about parents, part of the reason why, that was kind of like a struggle for me was, growing up, my parents didn't really have people over, over the house. They didn't have, friends over to the house or things like that. We would go visit family every now and then and stuff like that. But as far as like my parents being social, having, social life outside of work, that wasn't something that was necessarily exposed to me growing up. So I kind of took on their beliefs and their patterns and behaviors when I got to college. I kind of like to stay, in a small crowd, when there was a lot of people around. It would definitely impact my anxiety because, how do I look? What are people looking at me? Do I have to be outgoing or overly friendly and stuff like that? So, unlearning those behaviors and things like that, and, recommitting to the networking and, getting to meet new people. That's actually something I've been working on these last several years, especially the networking part, because you can't do things alone. Right. So, yeah, I would agree with that, the things that you see your parents do or go through definitely have an impact on you as far as networking when you do get to college and things like that.
Ronnie, you made a valid point, and I first and foremost, I want to publicly thank you for making the decision to put your social anxiety on the back burner and joining us. Because I told you at the time that I asked you to be a part of the team, I was going to be heartbroken if you had said no. I was going to put Dr. Maiden on you and be like, Doc, I need you. I need you to strong arm Ronnie and get him to say, look, what Dr. Fitz always says, what do I have to do to get you to say yes? I was going to put Dr. Maiden on you. Yep. But to your point, I love that you said that you were able to identify how your parents' way of navigating social networks and the family system contributed to how you view, the social networks and the family. And it's interesting because where Andre is concerned, we were the exact opposite. So his dad and I were both social butterflies. Like we were part of the proverbial in crowd. So as a result, growing up, we both had friends, and we ran in the same circles. So we had a number of the same friends, and we're both from ginormous. When I say ginormous, Andre's dad and I are both from ginormous families. So Andre really did have this interesting cocktail of social networking skills, whereby he was taught literally from birth of the importance of family and social engagement. And because we're from small town America, a number of his dad's family members and a number of my family members were friends. And like our uncles grew up running in the same circles and playing sports together. Our families just knew each other, and there was a cohesion between our families that strengthened Andre's social networking, not only within the context of family, but also outside in the community. And then when you look at all of the camaraderie that goes into athletic involvement, he had that. So he, now at 32, almost 33 years old, he is very socially engaged. But I often chuckle because Andre's real laid back and chill. So even though he's, for the most part, popular and to your point, Ronnie, he has two categories of friends. He still has his key childhood friends that he grew up with in the community, but he also has his close-knit group of friends from college that in many ways, two very different characteristics identify those groups of friends, but still very close to those individuals today. And it's the plus side of it is that those skills that have literally been instilled in him his whole life contribute to how he navigates the corporate sector. And I think that it's important that we talk about that. And I believe I mentioned briefly last week the family initiative that Heritage Sports Radio Network is doing to bridge that gap, right? To really shine the spotlight on the importance of that HBCU culture, which, in my opinion, Ronnie, you tell me what you think. I think it's all about family. I think the essence of the HBCU culture is family.
Absolutely.
It's all about family. And you're away from home and your blood family, but you have a family here on this campus that's going to love you, embrace you, hold you accountable, and grow you up in a way that's going to help you to be a positive, productive member of society. Your thoughts?
I agree 1,000%. And, like I tell people, when I first went on my first recruiting trip to Virginia State University, I was there for a whole afternoon. It was a basketball game. And I ended up staying pretty much about almost the whole day and night there because I felt at home. I felt that family atmosphere. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, my freshman year, our homecoming had got rained out. But it wasn't really until my sophomore year when I really saw how powerful that family ties are to Virginia State University. And when homecoming came around, it was the thousands of people, former alumni, who come together. And, it is really a huge family atmosphere. And I'm thankful every day that I was able to go to a place like Virginia State University and build those relationships with people and meet people that I'm still very good friends with to this day.
It's like an oversized family reunion.
Absolutely, and people don't really understand. Like I always tell people, you've had to have gone to a HBCU to really understand how close knit and tight the family is. It's almost like how you were saying, Dr. Pitts. It's a very small town. Virginia State is only maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people on campus, so it's not hard to see everybody or know everybody and know what's going on, because it's not like where VCU is 30 minutes down the road. VCU has over 30,000 students, so it's in that instance it's kind of impossible to really know everybody or be close knit. But at Virginia State, it was family, and we don't, and sometimes we kind of take for granted how special that that bond is, and especially during times like this with COVID going on and things like that. A lot of my, friends from Virginia State, we're missing each other. We're missing getting together for homecoming and sharing old stories and, collaborating, seeing what everybody else has going on. It's a special thing. And what kind of wanted me to kind of also, talk about that, having that networking and, those networking skills and that support system for transitioning from a football career or, a student athlete career. And, like our other co-host, Jared Johnston, talks about in his book From Cleats to Loafers, that transition period, it's really important to have that strong support system and, networking. and just to, share a little bit of my testimony, when like I said, after I finished my playing career, I definitely struggled with the transition, mentally. And, first and foremost, I got to do this real quick. I got to shout out my beautiful wife who, we got together literally my last year of playing football. And, unfortunately, she didn't get to see my, college career play out and things like that. But she was, she was my rock. She was my stability and my foundation for, getting through that transition period because, I had kind of isolated myself from my support system and from, that network that I had built at Virginia State. And so, I had relied heavily on her. And, she was there every step of the way. And, she was that, that foundation piece for me where I could get out of that funk and really start to reconnect with people who I hadn't talked to and, since I had graduated and things like that. So, special shout out to my wife for, being, especially my post-playing career, my biggest support system and, everything I've done after playing. And fellas,
Ronnie,
real quick.
Speak to that a little bit more. I think that it's important for our listeners to get a sense of what that looks like. What does that level of support look like, feel like, and what did that? I mean, I know you just touched on the significance and importance of it, but expound on that. What that was like in real time, the types of things maybe that she did and how you were able to respond to that. And look, and obviously it worked because you married her. Touch on that a little bit for our listeners.
So, like I said, when me and my wife first started dating, it was literally going into my last training camp for football my senior year. And at that time, I was already 3 knee surgeries in. I knew that was going to be my final season. And, I'll be honest with you, when we first started dating, if you'd have told me that 6 years later we'd be married and have the life we have right now, I probably would have laughed because, I didn't deserve her her love and support that she was offering to me. She wasn't a necessarily a huge football fan, but she never judged me. She never wavered. She didn't leave, because like I said, that those first 2 years after playing football, I was going through it. I was angry. Wow. I was depressed. I isolated myself. I was literally, I was what you would call, somebody who was functioning while being depressed. I could put on a poker face and go to work and do my job and, drown myself in, my clients' issues and things like that because it took me away from having to deal with my own issues. And I would come home and, I would literally just lay in bed and, wouldn't engage with her, wouldn't talk to her, I would take out my frustrations and, I really put her through a lot, our first couple of years of being together. And she never wavered. She was that steady, calm voice who was always encouraging, was always supportive. And even herself, she definitely took the initiative a couple of times to reach out to my support system, my close friends and things like that, to have them come by and check on me and, to kind of, lift my spirits up. So, I credit my transformation and, getting out of that depression to her because she saw the ugly side of me that nobody else saw. When I would go out in public, I was, that same laughing, funny, get along with everybody, Ronnie. But when I would come home, I didn't know who I was. I was just existing at that point. So, people don't understand how important it is to have, especially for guys, especially when we talk about guys not wanting to deal with their mental health, not wanting to deal with the stigmas associated with, being perceived as weak or emotional and things like that, to have a woman who, wants to bring the best out of you and wants to support you no matter what you got going on and allows you to find yourself even when you can't. Like I said, I could go on for days about, how appreciative I am of my wife and, her being that rock and being that foundation for me. So, fellas, when you find a good one, hold on to it because they will, anything that you want to manifest, they will help you manifest it times 10, So, my wife has been a very intricate part in my life for these last 6 years, and I couldn't be where I am today without her. So, special shout out to my wife, Neek. I know she's listening right now,
nice.
While working in her salon. So shout out to her. And, like I said, having that support system after playing football was very beneficial for me because, like I said, once I was able to get through my depression and things like that, I relied heavily on my support system. And, the job I work at now, at the mental health company I work at now, I would say over 75% of our employees are Virginia State grads. And, it feels good to be able to work, have coworkers who went to the same HBCU as I did, and to have that, kind of like close-knit family feeling in a workplace environment. And, Dr. Fish, you can also attest to this, how hard it is to have that, close-knit feeling with coworkers and things like that, because, when you go to work, you're just more concerned with, making your money, doing what you need to do to, move up the business and things like that, as opposed to building those relationships. But a lot of us had relationships before we started working in this field, and that's been a benefit because, and this as well, being a mental health professional, sometimes you come across cases or clients that you might not be well versed in or have a lot of expertise in, but you have coworkers who have either dealt with those situations or can lead you to the direction to find those resources to help. And I would credit, being part of that family and being from Virginia State, and, even my boss, she's a Virginia State grad. So, she definitely understands that HBCU mentality and how that is. And so that networking right there has been very beneficial to my career success as well.
Nice. Well, look, folks, oh, my goodness, we are having yet another powerful discussion. And as always, we always want to hear from you. We know that these conversations are important to you. You can always join the conversation at 515-605-9744. You can email your comments and questions to us at htpregame@gmail.com. We also encourage you to download the Heritage Sports Radio Network app so you can listen anywhere by visiting the App Store or Google Play. And all you have to do is search Heritage Sports Radio and hit the download button. You can also help us keep these conversations growing by your sponsorship with a gift in whatever amount you can afford by visiting drlaurendpitts.com and clicking on the donate button, or you can email us at htpregame@gmail.com to receive a sponsorship packet. So, Ronnie, we've been fleshing this out for the past few minutes, and it's so key. And as always, I think about, all the things that we hear in the media, and so oftentimes, the different professional athletes and scholar athletes that have issues going on. I think about, all of the college athletes that are testing positive for COVID. I think about, various instances over the years where college athletes have come up on charges for rape or some sort of misconduct. I think about all of the horror stories that we hear in the media about professional athletes and, whether it's murder or sexual abuse or home invasion or other risky behaviors. It's like these systemic issues seem to be endless. So I asked you, do you believe that scholar and professional athletes have enough internal and external support from family, their teams, and other outside agencies?
I would say yes and no. And so the reason I would say, I'll answer the no part first. The reason I would say no is when we talk about, like we said, student athletes who are from impoverished areas or low-income areas where, the family structure is typically in shambles or disorganized or dysfunctional, whatever the case may be. And we talked about how a lot of these kids, they grow up with single-parent households or living with grandparents or other family members and things like that, where, for them, sports is kind of like, we talked about it in the first episode, where the family puts that negative pressure on you to perform and succeed, because you're the voice of the family. You're the lifeline for this family. If you don't succeed and make it, then this entire family fails. And we talked about, earlier in the show how having, positive family support and positive family engagement can increase your performance on the field and in the classroom, whereas, some student athletes, they come from negative families or families who put, unrealistic pressure on them to succeed. And, like we talked about with social anxiety, student athletes go through anxiety just like anybody else do. So having that anxiety in the back of your mind where I have to do this at a high level, I have to perform at a high level at all times just to get a chance, oftentimes you can do more damage to yourself. And even though, I can't necessarily speak for, Division I programs and things like that, but from just what I've seen and talking to student athletes who have attended D1 schools, they do put a lot of things in place for you to have that support and to have somebody to talk to. But, like we talk about in the mental health field, when you haven't had that support for a good majority of your life, you often build trust issues. You have a hard time trusting these things because sometimes for people who have mental health issues, when good things happen, they see it as a bad thing because, well, when this good thing happens to me, how long is it going to last before the bad thing happens again?
Right.
So, when you're dealing with student athletes who come from these environments and go to a school where they have these supports, these programs, and these networking opportunities in place, you give yourself anxiety thinking like, well, what if I screw this up? Or what if I say the wrong thing? Or what if I don't perform how they want me to? Well, these opportunities still exist for me after I'm done playing. And oftentimes, you'll see student athletes sabotage that and resort to old behaviors and old characteristics that they had coming into school. On the flip side, with that being said, when you do have that support coming through high school and things like that, I do think some of these schools do offer great support systems. Me being at a Division II HBCU, my teammates were my support system. That was our program in place with my teammates. And, our coaches always had, open door policy where if we were ever going through anything, we could always go talk to them. And I will say that the coaches I did have at Virginia State, they were very good about that. Our coaches were very invested in the well-being of us and understanding where we come from and, how we got to where we got to and things like that. But as far as like the school having those support programs and things like that specifically for student athletes, Virginia State necessarily didn't have those things in place when I was there. But, like I said, we relied on our teammates and our coaches to be our support system and to have those things in place. So I think it depends on, how you are as a student athlete coming into the school, how you perceive those programs put in place. But I will tell people if they have them, use them and utilize them, to the best of your abilities because they can offer you some type of support.
So I want to thank you for that. I want to spend, these last 20 minutes that we have. Let's flesh this out a little bit more. So when we think about networking and net connecting and our support systems, let's talk a little bit more about how athletes can develop a strong network and support system, and then how that can contribute to helping athletes achieve successful career transition. I think that, I know we've talked about it on previous shows, and you actually alluded to it again today when you said that with all of the notable alum that FAMU has, they should never have a money issue. I think the Alumni Association is key. You also touched on fraternities and sororities, and there's so many social organizations that are available on our HBCU campuses. What also comes to mind is being able to connect in social networks that are related to your field of study. So when I think about I think it's the National Black MBA Association, right? When you think about the broader scale social networks that are linked to academia, that's a great way for student athletes to build their network, to build their personal and professional support system, that can be instrumental in helping them for successful career transition, whether the successful career transition is to the league, because as we've said time and time again, you're not going to play sports forever. So
absolutely,
you're going to have to be able to be able to utilize those networks to be instrumental. And I'm actually looking up some information that I pulled on Jonathan Taylor. As you know, he's our hometown hero, who was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. And the article says Jonathan Taylor at JT 23 has broken the record for most endorsement deals for a rookie running back in NFL history. Go JT.
Oh, wow. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Look, right? He's doing a darn thing. And that statement comes per his marketing agents at Everett_SM. His lifetime, you ready for this, Ronnie? Hold on to your chair. His lifetime endorsement deal with the Toppers Pizza chain includes ownership in 4 franchises in Madison, Wisconsin.
Hey.
Jonathan, look here, right? Jonathan Taylor endorsements: Toppers Pizza, Under Armour, UW Credit Union, Campbell's Soup, American Family Insurance, Fanatics, and Panini. ESM also landed marketing activations for Taylor with Bose, EA Sports /Madden, Comcast, and Ascent Protein. Now, you tell me that young man, I mean, Ronnie.
That's awesome, right there. That's awesome.
Ronnie.
Goodness gracious.
Ronnie.
And those are some very large local, regional, and national companies right there. He's tackled all 3 levels.
Yep. And
awesome.
and
I
believe
awesome.
that when we look at support system and strong network, as it relates to the level of success that JT is having, it's family, because I told you he's got a strong familial support system. He has a strong community support system. But his broader network, right? Folk are loving on this young man, and they are wholeheartedly invested in ensuring that he is successful. And not only is that happening, but Ronnie, he has the wherewithal to navigate those relationships properly. He
Absolutely.
understands that, as you said toward the beginning of the show, he is not going to achieve, he would not have achieved the levels of success that he is achieving by himself. So, kudos, hats off, props, shout outs, and all of that. JT, Dr. Pitts is so very proud of you. You are representing Salem, New Jersey, Salem High School Rams like nobody ever has. He is truly a prototype, Ronnie. He is a prototype of the importance of the academic component. He is a prototype of someone that exemplifies and embodies the importance of social networking and social engagement and a positive, productive, healthy, well-informed support system. And I don't think that we can emphasize that enough within the context of successful career transition. What we know matters, but who we know can open doors of opportunity and be instrumental in transitioning us to levels that perhaps we hadn't even considered. And even the relationship that we have as this team, right? I'm always fleshing stuff out with Dr. Maiden, and he bounces stuff off of me, and I bounce stuff off of him. And what did I tell you the day that I reached out to you, Jared and Andre, to convey I need you, right? I didn't say, I did say I would really love for you all to join me, but I needed you. When I consider the vast size of my global network, I really truly believe that the three of you were the best fit for where House Talk is going and what needed to get accomplished. It was all about networking. It was all about the support system. And if you want to share with the listeners in part, what I said to you about the potential growth that this opportunity would bring to each of us individually, collectively, but more importantly, our HBCU families and Black and Brown communities all over the nation. Please share. Tell the listeners what it was like for you when I reached out to you.
I'll never forget it. It was on, I believe it was on a Saturday. I think it was a Sunday you had emailed me. And when I saw the email, I was like, I know that name sounds so familiar. And then when I clicked on it, I was like, oh, yeah, I did her podcast last summer. And, like I always say, shout out to Dr. Brian Maiden, who is he's actually one of my professors currently at Virginia State University in the Counseling Education Department. Who introduced me to Dr. Lauren Pitts last year when I did an episode for her podcast during her Summer Madness series. So shout out to him. And, me and Dr. Maiden's relationship, I've known him for the last 2 years. So, and I've definitely built up a very strong rapport with Dr. Maiden for him to even include me in that endeavor in the first place. And I'll never forget, me and my wife were actually on the way to a grocery store when I got the email. And I was telling my wife, I was like, baby, like, this lady wants me to do a reoccurring podcast every week. And the first thing I thought, I was like, man, what the hell I'm going to talk about? Like, I'm not nobody special to be talking to people every week. Like, I'm sitting there like, man, what does she want me to talk about? I'm like, I'm not this special icon who, this wealth of knowledge. And my wife was like, well, that might be really. She was like, it'll be good for you because you do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of good things that you can talk about. And, when I told her what the podcast was about, she was like, see, you talk about that with people all the time about how that transition was for you. So here's a platform where you can share that with the world. Yeah. And,
you tell her I love how she loves you. You make sure you tell her that. And if you're listening, Lady Ransome, I love how you love my surrogate son right here. I love you for it. I love you, love you, love you. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. So, yeah, she definitely pushed me to reach back out and to see, what the podcast was going to be about. And like I said, when we had that conversation back in August, talking about these episodes and things like that, you had told me and Jared, like, look, this podcast can change the game because there's a void out there right now where athletes don't have a chance to share the unflattering side of what goes on for student athletes and how that transition has been a struggle. And it's crazy because since I've been doing this podcast, I've had a lot of my teammates and former high school teammates reach out to me and share with me their own testimonies and struggles about how it's been hard for them. And they all sat there and said, like, we never knew you were going through that, or it's crazy to think that you of all people were struggling like that. And I was like, I thought I was the only one too, which was kind of like why, always kept quiet all these years and really didn't reach out to people and share that because I thought I was the only one. And by doing this podcast with Dr. Pitts and Jared and soon to be Andre, this podcast has been a game changer. And, just being able to, share my stories and to have somebody like Dr. Pitts to also, share her testimonies and to give us this platform has been a blessing. And, she tells us every single week when we have our, pre-podcast meetings that, this episode is going to be the one, it's going to be the one that people sit there and be like, man, I really needed to hear that. I really needed that information. And, the feedback we've gotten each week has been phenomenal. People are really loving what we're talking about. And, I'm glad I said yes. At first my anxiety was telling me to say, no, don't do it. You're going to embarrass yourself. You stumble over your words when you get to talking sometimes. Like, don't embarrass yourself on a national podcast. But I'm glad, I said yes and that my wife pushed me to say yes because, it's been a blessing, and I'm appreciative for every show I've done so far.
Ronnie, just so you know, look, and you know me, I'm always transparent. I'm not even ashamed. I was going to guilt trip you. I promise you I was. If you had said no, I was going to guilt trip you, and I was going to get Dr. Maiden to wear you out for me until you said yes. And here is why. Because as you know, and as many of our faithful listeners know, I am a woman of great, 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 great faith. And I don't do anything without praying about it. I have to, because when I don't, I tend to make mistakes. I tend to make mistakes in my decision making. I tend to put myself in positions that perhaps I shouldn't be in, that at times throughout the course of my life's journey have been detrimental to me. So spiritual wisdom and maturity has taught me at this station in my life that for me, I don't push my faith or my spiritual beliefs on anybody, but for me, I like to seek one who knows a whole lot more than I do before I make decisions. And to that point, I knew in my heart, I knew in my spirit that House Talk pregame was going to be a game changer. And that being stated, it was paramount that this team was going to be a family, that this team was going to be cohesive, that this team was going to be their authentic self and be able to fully embrace the authenticity of our individual selves and the authenticity of this show. I am raw. I am raw. I am raw. I am raw. Ronnie, I have always been raw. I was raw as a kid. I was raw as a teenager. I was raw as a young adult, and I'm hella raw as a seasoned adult. And this is why I'm so raw, because life is raw. Life is raw, and for us, as members of Black and Brown communities all over the nation, I really believe that life is even more raw for us. So how dare we sugarcoat life? How dare we sugarcoat the solution-focused strategies that we present week in and week out when we know that the blood members and the non-blood members of our Black and Brown family all over the nation are dying, are suffering, are struggling, are in many instances walking around aimlessly, not having a clue as to how to appropriately navigate this thing called life in a healthy way. And I just believe, I knew in my heart that we had to take House Talk to the next level, but I believed that we had to do it together. Jared is I'm going to shout this out for him. We were hoping that Jared would be able to join us today, but he and Andre are both in sales, and they are both grinding. When I say two extraordinary salesmen, so for both of them, a lot of times their busiest day is Saturday. So that's why Andre has not been able to, because he is doing the darn thing down in Atlanta.
And if you're in the Northern Virginia area, definitely check out Jared Johnston's real estate page. If you have Instagram, his Instagram is Jared Johnston 1 I don't know if you've had a chance to check it out, Dr. Pitts, but the houses he's showing, my goodness, they're not houses, they're mini mansions and mansions. Wow. He's doing the damn thing in Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC area. So if you're in the DMV area, definitely check out Jared Johnston. I don't know the realty company he works for, but I'm pretty sure if you ask for his name, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I know who that is. I mean, if you need a realtor, definitely look him up and give him a call, because he's definitely going to get you in the right position to definitely get a house of your dreams.
Yeah. I actually just texted Andre. He is actually at the largest Dodge Jeep Chrysler dealership in the Atlanta metropolitan area. And as soon as he texts me back, I will tell the listening audience what that dealership is. I want you to go see my baby, Andre Garlic.
Oh, yeah.
Show him love. Show him some love.
Shout out to
down
the Dodge family.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll hit me back before. Otherwise, we'll shout that out right and proper next week. But they are both doing extraordinary work, and we want you to show them some love. We are encouraging you, particularly, always, but we want to emphasize it now with this funky climate that we're living in that seems to be getting crazier every minute of every day. Now is a really, really, really great time to love on Black businesses. We've got some Black and brown business owners out here that are extraordinary, extraordinary business owners, and love on them, support them, encourage them. I've often said, I don't take anything from my white counterparts. I don't. In that, though, one of the things that I think we have to stay mindful of in this very dangerous climate that we're living in is a key component of family is we take care of each other. We take care of each other. We love each other. We look out for each other. And what we know to be true in these times that we're living in is that that's not everybody's perspective. That's not everybody's position. I've heard various news reports where folk are referring to the marginalized and the disenfranchised as lazy. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that as a nation we have gone so far backwards. So my encouragement to our listening audience is, in addition to supporting some of the major white-owned and operated businesses that you support, that's fine. I'm not telling you where to shop, but I'm asking you to give consideration to the Black and brown-owned businesses that may be struggling and could benefit from your patronage. We're asking you to love on the HBCUs that you graduated from, to be a part of the alumni association, to give back, to create space to offer jobs to the graduates coming out of your alma maters. Have that relationship, if you don't already, with your alma mater that creates space for us to increase our efforts in taking care of each other. We believe that it's important. We want you to go out and buy Jared's book. We want you to continue to tune in each week. We want you to share with your community, your family members, your friends, your colleagues, everybody that you know about House Talk Pregame, because we want you to join these discussions every week. You can join the discussions every week by calling us live during the show at 515-605-9744. And you can email your questions and comments to us at htpregame@gmail.com. We love you. We love you. We love you. We thank you for all the support that you've shown us. And until next week, I am your host, empowerment coach, and international inspirational speaker, Dr. Lauren Pitts. And
this has been Ronnie Ransome. Everybody have a blessed weekend and stay safe out there. Peace.
go out and vote. Vote, vote, vote. We love you. Tune in next week for House Talk pregame. Have a great